Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Customer losses from scams are down 20% year on year, according to National Australia Bank, but the number of attempted scams continues to rise. And it comes with a warning of a new wave of AI-powered scams and dodgy crypto investments. Chris Sheehan is Executive of Group Investigations at NAB and knows this space better than most, having also spent 27 years at the Australian Federal Police. Chris, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. Nice to be back.
Let's start with the good news. New year, we want the good news. The amount of money that's been stolen is down 20%. That's a good thing, isn't it?
It is. Look, I'll take it for a start, and I'm sure our customers are glad that the losses are down, that losses from scams are down 20%. And I'd like to see it down even further, and I'm confident that we're going to get there. But, at the risk of being a bit of a downer after we tried to start on a high point, the number of scam attacks against our customers has increased by 18%. So I guess what that tells us is that the environment is still really hostile. These criminal groups are still very active and still out there and looking to steal everybody's money if they can get a chance to do so.
So why are the results better? Is that customer behaviour? Is it better security from banks? What's the reason?
All of the above. I have no doubt that a big chunk of this is because of all of the communication that's occurred through podcasts like yours, through the media, through the efforts of the banks, government and others to raise awareness of scams and the types of risks and threats that are out there. You'd be very brave to suggest that hasn't played a crucial role. People are more aware, are more scam savvy, but banks have spent tens of millions of dollars in the last 3 or 4 years to really drive into this problem. Our own bank alone has probably spent very close to $100 million just tackling this issue in terms of technology and people, putting in place things like real-time payment alerts. So if someone's making a payment, it'll intervene in the payment if we think there's a scam concern, doing everything we possibly can to try and make it as safe as possible. So bring those two things together and we're starting to see the types of reductions that we'd like to maintain.
Is there a flip side to it? Anytime I get a note from my bank, I almost disregard it in that if I need to, I'll go to the app and if need be, though I can't remember having done this in the last year, I'll actually ring them. But the problem is that I don't trust anything that comes from a bank now. And that's not against the bank per se.
No. Sean, I think that you're the ideal customer in some respects. I say this all the time. Whatever gets presented to you in a digital environment, if you're a text message, a WhatsApp, an email, a phone call, something that you might see on social media or online, you have to treat all of that with a very healthy degree of skepticism because you really have no way at first blush of assessing whether it's accurate, truthful, or safe or not. Yeah. So if you're doing that, and I think that's what most people are doing now, that's a big tick. Where banks are leaning into this, we're putting protections around the text messages that we do use, so it makes it much harder for criminals to spoof them or phish them. And I think most of us are moving towards communicating with our customers through the banking app because that's obviously a very secure vector for communication. My advice to people is, if in doubt, don't make a payment because once you hit send on a payment and that money leaves your account, the likelihood of anyone being able to get it back from you is incredibly low. It's probably less than 10%. Ring your bank on a number that you know is their number. So the number on the back of your credit card or your debit card or the number that you source yourself from a reliable location. Double check, slow down.
Okay. One thing I do like about this, the banks are incredibly competitive in home lending, in business lending, etc. But they don't seem to compete. Well, they do compete because they advertise about their security systems, but it's not like that you're at each other's throats. Like everyone's kind of going for the same goal here.
Yeah, look, I think I've actually just come back from the UK before Christmas where I spent a fair bit of time over there talking to the banks and the regulators and government around how they're tackling this scams problem. And I'd been in Singapore earlier in the year for the same purpose. One of the observations I'd make coming out of those trips is that overall, Australian banking is probably the most collaborative and engaged with each other on this problem. You're quite right. Yeah, we compete fiercely. Yes, we all have our advertising campaigns running to raise awareness of scams and point out the fact that we're leading the industry in these things. And by the way, NAB is leading the industry, just to be clear. But when it comes down to sharing intelligence in real time, in collaborating with each other in meaningful ways to prevent organised criminals from being able to steal money from our customers and exploit our systems. I think we're doing it better than anyone in the world. And a really good example of that was in November last year. The major banks plus Suncorp all signed up to the BioCatch Trust Consortium. So we're exchanging real-time payment data now. And what that means in practical terms is my customer's caught in a scam. They go to make a payment to one of the other banks in this consortium. I will see telemetry in real time that says, hey, that looks like a mule account, or hey, that recipient account looks like it's been subject to an account takeover. And I can hold the money in NAB without letting that payment go. Now, that's unique. Nowhere else in the world is doing that. And I firmly believe it could only happen in this country where the banks work so well together on this problem.
Okay, now you've put together a list of the top 5 scams customers need to be watching out for this year, starting with AI-powered scams. What do they look like? A bit scary, really.
Well, I guess if you wanted to put a face to an AI-powered or artificial intelligence-powered scam, you could probably put Andrew Forrest's face to it, or Dick Smith, or Kochi. There's some good Australian examples of people whose identity, whose images, whose voices have been essentially hijacked by criminals using artificial intelligence to then portray them as spruiking for fake investment opportunities that are just straight out scams. We've also seen artificial intelligence used to do something that we call spear phishing, or very targeted scam attacks against CEOs, CFOs, and the staff that work closely to them. And a really good example of that happened in Hong Kong probably a couple of years ago, where the criminals used artificial intelligence to replicate a company officer's voice and convinced a person to make a very large multi-million dollar payment because it sounded real. I mean, I think one of the figures that gets sort of bandied about is they only need about 3 to 5 seconds of your voice to be able to produce a reasonable facsimile to try and convince someone. So we worry about artificial intelligence. It's going to be very beneficial from a business, commercial, personal life perspective, but every piece of technology has a dark side, and criminal exploitation of it will be a real problem for us into 2025 and beyond.
We'll be back in a moment with more scams too that you can look out for in 2025. Chris, stay with me. We'll be right back. I'm talking today to Chris Sheehan from National Australia Bank. Bucket list scams, what are they?
Bucket list scams were really great. A great example probably, and I'm assuming you would have been to this, Sean, the Taylor Swift tour last year, where
obviously
those tickets sold out in seconds. So bucket list scams are scams where the criminals are targeting events that they know will be hugely popular, are likely to be oversubscribed in terms of ticket sales, and they'll flood social media, online platforms with fake ticket offerings, and people are desperate to go and see these shows. They will sign up and pay money thinking they're going to get a ticket, and they don't. Obviously, they get ripped off. And there were thousands of these associated with Taylor Swift. There's some, we've got the Australian Open tennis right now. The men's and women's singles finals will absolutely be targeted by criminals. We've got other major acts, Oasis, Metallica, etc., coming to Australia this year. You can guarantee that the criminals will be, we're not dealing with the scalpers who used to hang out the front of the entertainment centre and sell you an overpriced ticket that it would at least give you a seat. We're dealing with fake tickets at an industrial scale being sold. So that's what we mean.
I have actually bought Oasis tickets, so now I'm going to go and have to check those. Remote access scams targeting businesses. What's that about?
Yeah, look, remote access scams have been around for a long time. I'd say there'd be a very high proportion of your listeners who've had some version of the phone call that's purporting to come from their internet service provider telling them they've got a problem with their service, and if you could just helpfully download some software, we'll be able to fix that problem for you. Banks broadly in Australia have been pretty effective in cracking down on those types of scams and against individual consumers. So the criminals will always find the lowest point in the ecosystem. And so what they're targeting now is businesses. And the way they do that is instead of using emails or text messages, they'll make a direct phone call to the business, tell them that either their internet provider the internet service has issues, or their business banking channel has an issue. And they will socially engineer the person on the other end of the phone, the innocent business person, to download software that then will expose everything that they do on their computer to the scammer at the other end. So as part of that conversation, they'll convince the business to log onto their business accounts. Obviously, that means the passwords and balance of the bank account and all that sort of stuff is exposed, and it will go from there.
Okay, and finally, phishing scams. They've evolved a lot over the years. Is it still a problem, a major problem?
Look, phishing is at the heart of almost every scam because, look, phishing's not particularly sophisticated in and of itself in terms of its technological application. It's a phone call, a text message, a WhatsApp, an email. It's all it really is a way for a criminal to make contact with their target victim and to engage that person in an exchange and a conversation. Once they have that hook in, that's when I call it the dark magic, really, but it's where they are sophisticated. It's their ability to socially engineer, to psychologically manipulate their target, either through creating a sense of urgency or a fear of missing out, or a combination of those things to get the victim to make a payment. But those phishing vectors will never change. Any communications methodology that allows people to share information with each other can be utilised by criminals for phishing. So it goes back to where we started, Sean. If you see something's presented to you on a digital platform, doesn't matter what it is, and in particular, if it's not something that you're expecting or not something that you've asked to receive, you have to treat it with a really healthy degree of skepticism and don't respond immediately. We tend to go snap decision and try and answer questions immediately. My advice is hang up the phone, delete the text message, stop, protect, and check before you send any money.
Good place to leave it. Chris, thanks for talking to Fear and Greed.
Good on you, Sean. Thank you.
That was Chris Sheehan, Executive Group Investigations at National Australia Bank. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.